Project Genesis, written by Brian Phillipson, narrated by John Delino Ziegler, Jr. Chapter 1, 2,000 years ago, Calvary. The soldier turned towards the midday sun and let the gentle heat kiss his face. The climate here was as warm as his beloved Rome, but far drier. In Rome, the olive groves would be casting their enticing aroma across the countryside, the gentle breeze blowing in from the coast, refreshing the air in the streets. But here in Calvary, the heat was dry and sapped his strength. The memory of Rome brought back even sweeter memories of his time as a legionnaire serving Emperor Tiberius. But that was no more. He was getting old, beyond his 40th year, and his eyesight was failing. He could make out light and dark, vague shapes, but details and color were things of the past. Without his eyes, his days as a legionnaire were over. He was lucky that the regional commander was a benevolent man, and it kept him on as a demoted foot soldier. At least he had food, shelter, and companionship, if not his eyes. They were carrying out the sentence on 3 criminals today. Prefect Pilate had made it clear that these 3 were to be executed together, even dictating the order of the crucifixion. 2 of the men were petty thieves. Already caught on 2 separate occasions, there would not be a third. But it was the 3rd man that Longinus felt sorry for. As the law required, the soldiers had stripped him of all his goods, sharing them out between themselves. They had then flailed and beaten him before he had carried his own cross to the hill outside of the city walls. But it was the man's crimes that made Longinus question the prefect's decision. He had proclaimed himself the king of the Jews, hence the crown of thorns the soldiers had placed on his head. Proclaiming yourself royalty and usurping the power of Rome was punishable by death. But this man was not interested in power, not in the normal sense. He claimed to be the spiritual leader of the Jews, seeking no taxes or favor, simply offering them salvation and spiritual guidance. For some time his following had been growing, and the sheer numbers were a threat. He was becoming too popular, and questions had been asked, threats made, but it was Silver that had finally drawn out one of his own followers who had betrayed him in the gardens. Longinus could not help thinking that the punishment was far from just, but it seemed as if Prefect Pilate was acting under orders to make an example of the man. And so they were here, on the low hills of Calvary, just outside of the city walls, as befitted a place of execution, a place the locals called Golgotha, which apparently meant the place of the skull. The crowd was smaller than expected. Since his arrest, many of the man's followers had gone into hiding, fearing persecution. The prefect had ordered extra guards out today to ward off trouble before it started. But even Longinus, with his poor eyesight, could tell that the crowds were thinner than usual. Looking up, he saw the vague outline of the 3 crosses, the prisoners' arms spread along the crossbars, nails driven at an angle through their wrists and into the timber, their feet held in place by more nails through their ankles. Longinus had seen some men hold on for days before succumbing to the loss of blood, dehydration, or asphyxiation. The 2 thieves flanked the 3rd man, a sign of further humiliation, as if the crucifixion was not enough. Longinus, new orders. This is taking too long. The prefect wants this over and done with. Break the legs of the 3rd prisoner. The centurion spoke quietly so his words did not carry to the crowd. Longinus hesitated, looking from one figure to the other. The center figure was the one the authorities feared, Jesus the Nazarene, son of Joseph. Breaking his legs would cause excruciating pain, additional internal blood loss, and put all of his weight on his damaged arms and wrists. Painful asphyxiation would follow. Sir, the man's already dead. There's no need to waste any more time on him, Longinus said. Are you sure? Show me. Longinus had hoped it would not come to this. Why had the legionnaire not simply taken his word? He shuffled along, careful where he placed his feet, not wanting to step on a loose rock and lose his footing. As he approached the middle figure, he placed the sun behind the man's body. The man in the cross cast a shadow over the soldier. He could see the man's outline and could make out the shape of his body. He raised his lance and aimed for the man's right side, just below the rib cage. There was surprisingly little resistance, the head of the spear easily piercing the skin. Longinus expected to hear a cry, perhaps of pain, perhaps of fear. Instead, all he heard was a gentle sigh, a sigh of almost contentment. The legionnaire was several feet away and obviously had not heard the sigh. Very well, he said. I'll report that the prisoner is
Sample complete. Ready to continue?